Today, you will learn the ins and outs of the Studio Slicex plugin within FL Studio. Studio Slicex has a lot of options to it, and so it can be very overwhelming. And today, we will go over all of those options. That way, you can take only the things you need to work effectively with the Studio Slicex plugin. Please sample what it's like to click that like button and subscribe. So the Studio Slicex plugin has two sections for samples. I loaded an A and a B, and all you have to do is drag a sample to either one. And the first thing we're going to take a look at here is layering. This layering drop down here in the bottom left corner affects how notes are assigned to the keyboard or how things are dumped to the keyboard. We have assigned both decks to whole keyboard. If we click that, you'll see down here right? Both of them were assigned to different spaces on the entire keyboard. Next, we're going to click Assign Both Decks to Black and White Notes. And now what's going to happen is one deck is going to be assigned to black notes and the other one's going to be assigned to white notes. We can also do layer both decks, which is going to put them all on the same notes. Right? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to assign both decks to whole keyboard so we can get these separated. And now I'm going to take marker 1 here and double click it, and I'm going to go to deck A and go marker 1 and double click it. So now it's highlighted in deck A and B. And I'm going to go down here to layer selections in both tracks. Now, both those selections are going to be on the same note on the keyboard. And as you'll notice, we lost a key up here, which was the original key for this one down here in deck B. Next one we're going to have is layer big word regions. Okay, we have layer homonymous, we have layer homonymous, we have layer homonymous, we have layer regions. Okay, and what this is going to do is layer regions with the same name. So if I go in here, let's say this was a clap, for example. I'm going to right click this, rename. I'm going to say clap. I'm going to go here. I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to say clap. And because I feel like having a third, I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to say clap. What's going to happen is when I click layer homonymous regions, they're all going to go to the same note. Next, we're going to have assign deck A regions to Articulator 1 and assign deck B regions to Articulator 2. We'll go over these further in a moment, but basically we have two articulators. If we'll see here, I have marker 1 selected. This is marker number 1. We're going to Art or Articulator 1. Now, if I go to deck B, they're all on 1, but if I go like that, you'll now see it's on 2 because I clicked Assign Deck B Regions to Articulator 2. Next thing we have is Normalize Layered Region Levels. So what that's going to do, if I click it, is now when I play this, it's going to be normalized. And if you guys know what normalized means, it basically means that they slam the volume up as high as they can without clipping for the most part. Next, we have Sample Start covers whole length. This basically has to do with the attack of a sound. And so what this does is we have this start section here. I've got to the right, this knob is sample start, and I can change this up or even farther. And as you can see, even highlighted here, you can see where I'm starting at. So what's going to happen is the sample start was covering the entire length of this. If I turn this off, I want you to notice what happens when I max this out. We were starting way at the beginning this time. And that's because the sample start covers the first 100 milliseconds or the attack of the sample, unless we turn it off and make it so that the sample start covers the whole length with this button instead of the first 100 milliseconds. Next, we have link velocity to volume. This basically just means however hard that I click a key on my MIDI controller is how loud that this sampler is going to be. So if I turn this off, no matter how hard I press, I get the same exact velocity. But if I come back and I turn this on, I get a whole lot of fluctuation. We got loop half of regions, and what this is going to do is loop the last half of a region. This is really good if you have a drum sample that you're using to fill in a space on a instrumental or something like that, and the tails of the drum sample is just not quite long enough, and it'll end up looping the last half of the region to kind of continue to give you that room feeling that the drums were played in, whatever reverb, just the tail of it, to help create a fuller sound. So if I play this note now, and it's going to do that until I let go. Again, great for filling the room space with kicks and hi-hats and things like that in a drum loop. Next thing we have is HQ envelopes. And when this is selected, our envelopes here in this section that we'll go over later are just going to have greater accuracy. So basically, we're adding more points and increments in which we can place the points of our envelopes. If you want to know more about envelopes, please click the video above. Next, we have lock audio data. And this is going to keep audio data when loading presets, at least according to what it says in the top left-hand side. I have not played with this. My assumption is that if I save the sample in here with slices and certain articulator settings and things like that, and I save that as a preset when I open it, because it would keep audio data when loading presets. It would keep the information when loading the preset. This may just be metadata. I'm not entirely sure. Next option here is leave unedited audio data on disk. And now that we've gone through all of that, we're going to layer both these decks, and we're going to go to our other layering dropdown. Here we have all, which means that they're just going to play normally. It's just going to be layered. We have all gain compensated, which is going to take the volumes of the two matched ones and bring them down to try and match or gain stage for the original volume, which is great if you don't want to blow your ears off if you're layering drum kicks and snares and stuff like that. So you'll notice a difference in volume versus, which is louder. We have velocity mapped. Anything in this dropdown, velocity mapped and under, is going to have to do with these crossfade options. So I'm going to choose one. And what's going to happen with this is you're going to notice as I play, I want you to notice when I click really hard, we're just going to get mainly that piano. I'm going to click it really quiet. I want you to listen more. We're getting more of the other sample. The two samples we have. Okay. When I play quietly, we're going to get more of this one. When I play loudly, we're going to get more of this one. Right? And that's because it's crossfading between the two according to these crossfade dimensions, according to the velocity. Okay. Next, we have modulation X mapped. You'll notice up here we have an X and a Y. And so if I move the X all the way to the right, if I move it all the way to the left, if I move it while I'm playing the notes, nothing happens until the next retrigger. We also have the same thing for mod Y, which will be our up-down. Okay, we also have random, which means it'll go either way, whatever it wants to. We click our square option here where it's one or the other. right? Chooses random one. We also have cycle. Now cycle is one or the other. Right? We also have song time synced. And song time synced is going to select the one that's closest to the current tempo. In which case is evidently both. And so quick through the crossfade options, this is one or the other. This one's going to be linear, straight across. This one here is going to have a nice balanced even curve, so it's going to come in kind of quick and then go out kind of quick. We have our unbalanced curve, which is going to favor one side. And then we have adding, which is like our balanced curve, but a lot more intense, and it's going to be a quicker switch, mainly at this top, as you can see, at least if the visual representations are correct. Another option we have here is same deck. This is going to let you only layer things from the same deck. So you'll see if I click that. Now all of a sudden, we don't have options for both decks like we did before. Assign both decks to whole keyboard and click this. And you'll see that all of these go away. And then if I switch decks, you'll see that all the other ones go away. So we'll turn that off. Another option we have here is auto dump, which has been happening a lot in the background, but you haven't seen. Basically, what's going to happen with auto dump is anytime that we change the way these are layered on this keyboard, they're going to auto dump to this playlist and layer however they want. Basically to represent exactly what we have set up down here. And I'll show that by going ahead and doing same deck. So it's only the deck I'm on. I'm going to select this entire deck. I'm going to do some sharp auto slicing, and I want you to notice we will have all of these here. If I take away all those slices I just did, by coming here and going to auto slice and go back to large grid, you'll notice when I come back to this piano roll, it's auto dumped this onto here. And this is something we generally want to turn off because we don't want to make something and then be editing our sample and all of a sudden our stuff's gone. Over here on the right is simple view options. So just the keys and the editors or decks, the keys, the decks, and our articulator settings. And then, boom, all of our Edison style settings here on top. The next section we're going to look at is our articulator settings for our regions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose marker 1 here. If you see I dropped this down, we got deck A, deck B, and we can choose any of these slices within either one. Now, first option we have here is output. What this is going to do is output us into the effects track. And so I went 1, and that's going to put us here at 1. However, you'll notice if we go to -1, -1's an option, and that's not going to put us anywhere. And the reason being is because this is all based off of the effects track that Slicex is on. If I go to track 4, I want you to notice what happens to insert 3. So now on the mixer, at the mixer insert number 3, we're getting sound. If I go to nothing, 0, we're on 4. The same one as Slicex. If I go 2, we're now 2 above. And so that is the purpose of this output track offset section. We also have cut group. This basically means that anything in this group number is going to cut the other thing, which if you have like a long tail or a long release and you don't want things overlapping when you play the next sample or the next chop, you want to have this on because this will make it so the next one you play is going to cut any other one that is in this same cut group. After that, we have our amp settings. We've got pan and volume. So pan left or right plus volume. Next, we've got our filter cutoff frequency as well as our resonance. If we move this now, it's not going to do anything. And that's because this is going to be associated with our filter settings over here. See how we have this off? If I turn this on, now we're cooking with gas. Next option is going to be speed, and speed is basically going to affect the pitch and how quickly or slowly it goes. So if I turn it up, down, right? Next we have our start options. I showed you the actual sample start here, which covers that first 100 milliseconds or the entire thing, associating it with the sample start covers whole length. But we also have a delay. And this can be cool for creating a quick dropout effect at the beginning of sample, or side shading a specific sample for whatever reason. Next, we have the articulators that these are going to be put to, which there's 8 articulators to use for the entirety of all of the snippets you have. We've got these going to Articulator 1, which Articulator 1 is going to include these filter options as well as every single one of these envelope options. Starting with the filter, we've got a low pass, a band stop, and a high pass. If I turn this to 1x, you can hear the low pass. Band pass, we get just the center. Band stop takes away just the center. And high pass leaves just the high. Now, our 2x and our 3x is going to be how steep the curves are for these. So basically, it's like tightening the Q on these filters. So if I do 3x on this low pass versus 1x, you'll see we get more of the high end in there. We've got our filter cutoff envelope amount, and this will basically, if I go to LFO, for example, and I create an LFO file, I didn't want to do that for volume. We're going to shut that off for volume. I'm going to reset the speed. Okay, so we're going to go LFO for the cut. And what this is going to do is I'm going to change the speed so that this LFO is now going to affect the cutoff frequency. Right? And what I can do is as I change this LFO amount, it changes how much of the LFO actually affects the cutoff frequency. Smaller amount means smaller wobble. I'll now turn that off via this button here. Next thing we got, of course, is the cut. Which will choose where we're cutting our frequency at. We have resonance, which creates a resonant peak. Wherever this cut is at, it's going to peak up the EQ setting that's here, or the filter setting that's here, so that it becomes stronger in volume right before the frequencies at which this is going to be cut off at. Which gives you that strong wah effect as you move this around. With it off, no wah. With it up, we got a wah. Next thing we're going to look at is envelopes. I'll put the envelope on the volume. If we turn this on, our volume is now going to follow this path from beginning to end. Okay, so we have multiple things here. If you see I move this attack, it doesn't do anything. That's because we don't have anything assigned to an attack setting here. What we can do is we can go to this drop-down, and in the drop-down we have presets, and we'll do ADSR, attack, descent, sustain, and release. Now, as I move this, I have an attack setting to work with. So if I move this lower, it'll be a quicker attack, longer. For some reason, it doesn't let me do it here, but that's fine. Okay, we can also move this point lower. and we're going to be following this path. Descent is going to be how long it takes to fall, which I'll move here. We can change the tension in it. We also have sustain. And what sustain is sustain, we're going to stop following our path once we get to the sustain point, okay? So I'll make this drastic for you. I'll bring this down here, and I'll make it really close. And what's going to happen is it's going to get loud, it's going to get really quiet, and it's just going to hold right here. It's not going to go anywhere. But even if I move this really close. So now I'm going to play it, and it's going to hold all the way through. But you'll notice when I let go, it's going to end very abruptly now. I'll turn it up so you hear better. So this audio path is going to go up through the attack, down through the descent, into the sustain, and hold at the sustain until we let the note go. So if I make this release longer, which the release is after the sustain, then when I let go, we'll have a longer release. So, right? Or I can just hold it all the way through. And that is the way the attack, descent, sustain, and release work. We also have a tempo button here, which will snap us to some tempo-based time here in the background. That way we can move our points to locations that are on time with the music. Next in this drop-down here, we have presets, which we saw. We've got open state file, and open state file is going to open different envelopes the same way that we opened these presets. And you can build these up by clicking Save State File if you make your own thing in here that you think is cool. We have Copy State, which we can do, move to another articulator here, click a drop down, and Paste State, in which we'll get the same exact one in this other window. Also, if we go back to Articulator 1 here, we have Undo History, which we can undo this to a certain point. This would be last reset, just straight up to the beginning. We've got Make All Loop. Now we've clicked Make All Loop, it's going to completely ignore our sustain, and when we play, it's just going to loop whatever we have here in this envelope section. We'll continue to go. We have Flip Vertically, which is going to flip this upside down. Kind of cool for an effect. We have Scale Levels. So if we do this, you can see we have this multiply, in which it's going to try and move everything by a multiple. We have Offset, which offset's just going to move everything up or down. We also have Center. And that can make for some very cool creative stuff. We also have Normalize Levels. So what Normalize Levels is going to do is if I drag these so that they aren't touching the outsides, it's going to be like when you normalize audio. It's going to slam them as high up or down as it can without clipping. We also have Decimate Points. So what Decimate Points is going to do, let's say I click this draw tool here, and I just start drawing. We got 1,000,000 points, right? If I come here, Decimate Points, it's going to start smoothing those out according to this threshold here, all the way up until we have some hard angles. Next, we've got Filter. Filter is going to be kind of a way to just smooth this out. As you see, when I change the width, it's going to smooth even harder, or it's going to keep the points. We have Offset. Offset's going to move it one way or the other. We have our decimation amount, which we just went over. And then we also have this impulse here. So there's those options. We have Smooth Up. Smooth Up is going to just smooth it out. We do have Attack Slope and Release Slope. So this is just going to be how hard do we want the attack to be. Basically the cue of the attack, and this is how much. And so if I move this to the right or to the left, we'll see the way that that changes. The release is going to be the same thing. While this is not exactly how it works, that's kind of the idea that I use to conceptualize it. We also have our offset, like normal on most, and decimation, which we've also gone over. Next, we have smooth up abrupt changes. So how this just popped all the way up there to the top. This is going to give it a bit of a fade because An abrupt change like that can create pops and other weird effects that you might not want. Since this is messy, we're going to load another ADSR. We're going to go to turn all points smooth. And so basically what that's going to do is that's going to try and create a smoothness throughout the entire envelope here. We also have create sequence. So this is our little sequence editor according to whatever BPM it has set in here. As you can see when I have this open, we've got that going. And so I can change each of these spots or add them however I want. I could draw, right? We've got randomize, and these are going to include decay levels. See that? Sustain. See how that sustain's changing. Release slopes. Okay. For each of those, we have ping pong. Ping pong is going to just double it up. We have our time multiplier, which is going to change the way this works with the tempo of the project. Now we got swing, which is going to just swing the middles a little bit. We have our attacks, decays, sustains, and a gate. And that's the cool options that we've got there. Next, we have Analyze Audio File. So what this will do is let you click any audio file, and it'll load up an envelope that matches the volume or the velocity at the different points of that audio file. So if I have a sharp kick and nothing else, then this will end up giving me a high and quick attack and a quick release and a drop off. And so this basically will just map whatever audio file you put into it and create an envelope out of that. So we've got background gradient. If I click that, you'll see this gradient flip. We also have invert grid, which is going to invert the colors on the grid from either black lines and a lighter background to white lines and a darker background. Our next option is going to be here. We can freeze this and make it so that it can no longer be edited. Okay, freeze editing, hide points, right? Plus it's cool, it looks all nice and frosty. We've got our pencil button here, which you've seen in action as I start drawing. If I click Alt, we're going to snap to points on the grid instead of just free forming. Next, we have snap to grid. So snap to grid, it's going to do the same thing. As I draw, it's going to snap things to the grid. Okay, if I click Alt though, when snap to grid, it is now going to do the opposite and let me freeform. If I make this simpler again, presets, ADSR, and we click slide succeeding points, what's going to happen is as I move points, the ones after are going to be moved, right? If I unclick it and I move the point, it moves by itself. Next, we have our LFO, okay? And we always have an on-off button here, an enable button for every single one of these. So if I disable this and I control the volume via the LFO, it's now according to this. We have a speed, so that lets us choose how many times this goes up and down, right? And we also have tension, which is going to change the way this looks and feels. We have skew, right? And we also have our pulse width here. So if I change this skew back up and I change this tension to, there we go, something like that, right? Got some cool stuff to work with. We have tempo-based time, which is just going to snap this to the tempo pretty much. And we also have our global or retriggered LFO phase. Having this off will let you retrigger. Having it on is going to match it to the playlist in the background. And to show this really quick, I'll make this longer. I'll click play on FL Studio. See, it always starts at a different point. If I unclick that, it's always going to start and retrigger at the beginning. Next option we're going to have is, I want you to notice that we've got some pretty drastic volume changes going here. So if I go to the amp setting here, I can actually turn this down to, let's say, 50%. I can turn it up, or or I can turn it off completely. And that's going to act much like this envelope cutoff amount option did when we were doing the filter LFO. And this will work for envelopes, velocity, mod X, mod Y, any of this. So if we go to our drop down here, you're going to see that we have a lot of the same exact options. What we're going to see is different is bipolar LFO tension. If I click that, we're going to get a difference here. Let's turn the speed up, right? And now it's only doing the LFO based off of one pole. It's not bipolar. And that's going to be this top one here that I can flip either way. If I go here, I can turn it back on. We can also do frozen LFO. And what frozen LFO is going to do is it's going to choose one of these points and it's going to just land us there, and that's it. So if we start right here, then that's going to be the volume for our sample. So if I click and start playing, you're going to see it chooses a point somewhere in here depending on where we are at with our playhead, because we're on global. It is no longer retriggering. If I turn this off, you'll see we always start at the same volume because we are starting our frozen LFO right here at the beginning rather than somewhere random along these points. Our next option, we've got, I'll turn this off, we've got velocity. And so this is going to be velocity based. So instead of doing this for volume, I'll do this for pan. Now, the lower the velocity, the more we'll have it going to the left. The higher the velocity, the more to the right. And that's the way the velocity can be used. We use a velocity curve. Right? And this can be used to affect different things. We can use that for the filter, the amp, whatever we might want. Our options here are going to be much like the regular envelope, nothing too special, but we do have a cool amount of different presets here. So we will now reset this back to normal and go to our next one. And if you'll notice, there's no on or off for these. Once you map these are just on. The only thing you can do is choose what you map them for and how. Okay, mod X. Now I want you to notice as I move our mod X up here, you'll see it go left to right. And so basically you can just choose whether you want to affect pan, volume, whatever have you, and choose what happens as you move mod X around. So if I do my cut, you'll see that I can affect the cut with our mod X. Same thing, we've got some cool presets, nothing too special. Mod Y will be the exact same except for our Y axis. And then we have random, which random is just going to basically do whatever it wants. So if I set our cutoff, right now we have a 50% chance of being below the middle, 50% for our cutoff, and 50% chance of being above it. If I move it like this, now we're mainly going to be below as we randomize where that's going to land at. And that is cool for just some creative effect. If you want to end up doing small increments, you can get some pretty cool sounds that won't sound too crazy. Like if we decided to just do a small difference in our cutoff frequency. Nothing crazy, but it adds a little bit of life. And so that's the options here for all of these. We have our start, which of course is over here, sample start. We've got speed. We've got our resonance, our cutoff, and our volume. And then all of these knobs are going to control the percentage amount, just like this envelope option here, that we use to control the amount of cutoff for our filter. And you can do up to 8 of these and assign any of these to whichever ones you want to assign it to. I could change this to Articulator 2, Articulator 6, whatever you want to do. So after our articulator settings, we have our master level, which is our volume, our master randomness, which is going to change how this randomizes. We can move this down, and it'll be the same as turning one of these down. We'll get less randomness going through the articulator to everything, except for it is master, it is not per articulator. We also have master LFO, which is master, it's not per articulator. This will affect the percentage of every single articulator in the way that it's affecting the regions assigned to that articulator. And then we also have master pitch, which will change the pitch of everything, every sample, all the way across the board. All right, now getting into the more advanced stuff, we'll try and fly through here. We have a loop. And so to summarize, we have basically what's 2 full instances of Edison to be able to edit our samples. We have a layering section which defines how these 2 instances of Edison interlace with each other when played through the sampler. We have a piano section where those samples are hosted and we can assign the keys that will be used to play those samples, as well as preview them. And finally, we have an articulation setting where you can assign each slice to its own articulator group, which there's 8 of those groups, and each of those articulator groups have their own envelope controls as well as their own filters. And that is about it. So if you like this video, please like this video. If you have any comments, please comment. I always appreciate a subscribe. It's Warren with Scale Audio, and adios.